Good morning, people. How we doing? Morning. It is February 21st. It's Wednesday, middle of the week, right after one trading day again, right? President's Day on Monday, shorter week. And we'll take a look at the overall equity market here that we have in front of me in just a bit, right? The S&P 500 futures. But first, I do want to tackle and take a look at one particular individual name, right? And that is going to be NVDA, right? NVIDIA is, hold on, let me do something here. NVIDIA is center stage today, right? We have a massive run up from the start of the year, and we're going to see how earnings play out. So a lot of people have been talking about AI bubble this, AI bubble that. It's at the beginning, it's at the end, so on and so forth. We saw super microcomputers expand aggressively over the last few weeks, and NVIDIA, right, holding very strong, pulling back down here slightly from just above that 740 level, right? So we're down a significant amount from that peak. Yesterday was a pretty harsh red day, and we're gapping down into the open right now. But today after the bell is going to be what many traders and investors are going to look at very closely. So NVIDIA is going to be reporting earnings today after the closing bell here today on Wednesday, February 21st. And big bets are going to be taking place and are going to be closely watched. The results are going to be closely watched, I should say. The outlook and accompanying commentary and forward guidance is going to be very carefully looked at for NVIDIA, right? It's had impressive returns, have not only been limited to the stock, but also a big force behind the AI frenzy, as we've seen over the past few weeks. That's helped power the broader market as well as the Magnificent Seven in 2023 and beyond. So NVIDIA's consensus earnings per share estimates for Q4 come out at $4.63, which is a 425% increase year over year, with a revenue forecast of $20.5 billion, and year over year that's an increase of 236%, right? So it's huge, massive, up from $6.1 billion in the prior year. That's a staggering difference. And with AI, the AI darling now making nearly as much revenue per quarter as it's used to on an annual basis, right? It's pushing all of these expectations greatly, vastly higher. NVIDIA and its stock has reflected these gains, massive gains, quadrupling over the past year and up 40% year to date. Keep in mind, we're towards the end of February, right? We're pulling down from about $700 a share, so it's up a bit less than 40%, but all right, whatever. It's also led NVIDIA to recently become the third largest company in the US publicly traded, as well as topping Tesla to become the most popularly traded stock on Wall Street. So if there is any guide to how shares will trade after earnings, keep an eye on the forward guidance as usual, right? That's going to be a very big factor in these markets. As always is in terms of the earnings report. If more exponential growth is in store for NVIDIA, the stock may continue to rocket, but if there are any signs on the contrary, the reaction might be muted, right, and even go in the other direction. So going into earnings, NVIDIA suffered the largest daily loss of market cap in its history, right, with the market cap of about $1.7 trillion. Even a 4% move can allow those numbers to make headlines. So another item to watch for on earnings, on the earnings call, will be comments made about trade restrictions, while the US putting sanctions in place on GPUs like H100 or rising competition from other companies. So I think all eyes are gonna be on that. I'm gonna have eyes on that as well. Realistically, the expected I think range of volatility is about 10% move up or down realistically. If we take a look at some of the commentary from some analysts, right, some say NVIDIA's on the buy side, NVIDIA's ability to deliver on promises and exceeded expectations coupled with an unprecedented competitive advantage means that this individual name could most likely continue rallying without too much concern of valuation risks or high valuation risks. The mechanism for the internet crash around the turn of the millennium was valuations getting ahead of earnings. However, the young AI revolution essentially says or sees the opposite problem for its more fortuitous beneficiaries like NVIDIA, and so far earnings have gotten ahead of valuations in this stock. In, I guess, a more bullish scenario. From the sell side, some analysts look at this and say NVIDIA's lead times for GPU orders have decreased from 8 to 11 months just to about 3 to 4 months, indicating the potential future sequential growth peak. So having ascended to the third largest market cap in the U.S. markets based on discounting ceaselessness growth into the future, causing... Caution is certainly warranted as there are clear risks in careless sequential growth will seize in the near future. So both cases, realistically, for NVIDIA here, I think they're going to beat expectations, personal opinion, but the actual move from earnings is going to be based on positioning from large money, more so what the earnings actually hold out, in my opinion. We're going to have to see forward guidance, how many times they say AI. Walmart yesterday, we had earnings as well. It climbed like 3.5% after topping estimates for Q4 amid e-commerce sales that jumped an impressive 23%. The CEO also pointed out a slowing deflation trends during the quarter, which with inflation stickier than expected, meaning that more shoppers led to increased revenues, not prices. Meanwhile, Walmart declared an annual dividend of $83 per share, 83 cents per share on a post-stock split basis, or $2.50 a share on a pre-split basis, a 9% increase from last year. So we're going to see the split on Monday, a 3-for-1 split, currently priced at $175. In other news, other stocks are making headlines here with Amazon. It will be effectively added to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, replacing Walgreens. You can see that Amazon is gapping up slightly here pre-market. It's going to replace Walgreens Boot Alliance, WBA, one of the meme names that we saw most recently over the past few years. The change reflects evolving nature of the economy and was prompted by Walmart's 3-for-1 split, which will reduce the weight in the index, and elsewhere Uber will be added to the Dow Jones Transportation Average, replacing JetBlue to increase exposure within the index to ride-sharing industries. So the shakeup sent Amazon up about 1%, in the after hours. Walgreens fell about 3% from that news. So that's what we're getting to start the session here. And what's going on right now in the U.S. equity markets? Yesterday, we had an opening drive that got rejected very harshly to the downside, and big sellers came into the market on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ alike. Right now, we're still hovering in between these key areas. Like I said, a very important area is into this low 80, as it was yesterday, as it was a few weeks ago, and as it is this morning with a lot of volume being accumulated into these lows. This is going to kind of cause upside or downside in this market as I see this thing playing out. As long as we're below 49.96, in my opinion, on the S&P 500 futures, there is a little more inclination to the downside, but the sellers really have to start pushing away from this 80, back down into these high 50s and potentially even lower as things stand. So, the bears, they've had a few sessions of downside momentum since the end of last week, and if there's going to be continuation, we just can't see structural changes to the upside. So we're going to have to see more bearish behavior into this lower 80, I guess, to start off the session if there's going to be any continuation to the downside, the way I see things shaping up. Other than that, back into 96, maybe some of the final sellers could be in there, but we start to kind of shift hands if prices manage to move back above that area. Like I said yesterday, there's a lot of volume accumulated into these lows, literally where we peaked a low in yesterday's session, just under that 70 marker, and it's going to be a barrier before we get into that high 50 if there are any sellers in sight. So I hope everyone does well here and is ready for NVIDIA earnings that are coming out after the bell. Yeah, there was a little lag. Setting up the new PC here for streaming, actually, so that's going to be up and running by next week. The lag will be gone, and we'll have much, much better streaming realistically, so apologies for that. This one was overjoyed with too many things open over the past few weeks. So with that being said, let's see how the day plays out. I'm expecting kind of slower movement into the NVIDIA earnings, and we'll go about that and that movement into the end of the session. Also, let's open up our live trading room where we're going to be trading the equity assets